So, what were your experiences during 9/11?
Well, my first experience, I remember hearing about the first plane crash on the radio, and I assumed it was an accident, which I think a lot of people did. And then clearly, when a few minutes later the second plane crash happened, it became clear that it had been a terrorist incident, and that couldn't just have been coincidence.
Well, how did you feel when you learnt that people had deliberately killed so many other people?
I suppose I'm not surprised at people wanting to kill many other people. I've known that there have been terrorists. I've known there have been terrorists with a great deal of hatred for the West in all sorts of shapes and forms. So I was very concerned that it was another escalation in the war, but I wasn't shocked and surprised that this sort of thing might happen. I think the fact that the conflict is there is well known. This was just another battle, as far as I was concerned.
How did you feel about the people's families who were killed there?
I think on anything like that, any loss of life, whether you think that it's a criminal thing or whether it's a war or a battle or whatever you want to call it, it's absolutely dreadful for every individual family. And of course you heard the details of the stories, the desperate mobile phone calls being made just before the end, the phone calls from United Flight 92, I think, where they actually tackled the terrorists. And every individual story is a desperate one. But I have to say that I temper that with the knowledge that there are many, many more equally desperate stories around that don't make the news in the same way as 9/11 did. 9/11 was a very spectacular event, but what happened to a family in 9/11 wasn't necessarily any worse than what has happened to many other families involved in conflict.
Do you think governments should have taken greater steps to prevent incidents like 9/11?
I think it's very difficult. If what you're asking about is should there have been, better airport security, should we have more surveillance, should we wreck our lives more in order to make it impossible for terrorists to do such a thing, then my answer is no. I think you prevent terrorism by making sure that the legitimate mass of people don't want to engage in terrorism and are marginalised by their own society. And then you can treat it as a policing action where society is on your side. In that sense, yes, governments should have done more, but in the obvious sense of just tightening airport security, no, I don't think that's the right way to go.
What do you think about people's reaction to 9/11? And how George Bush used the term crusade, which further enraged lots more Muslims.
I think the use of the word crusade was terribly unfortunate. A dreadful, dreadful mistake to be made, which could only have been made by somebody with a deep ignorance of the enemy he was dealing with. I think the correct way to fight terrorists is to isolate the terrorists from the community that they purport to represent. I think a lot of the reaction to 9/11 has done the opposite to that. Certainly the war on Iraq achieved the opposite, and the the repeated focus on 9/11, every anniversary of it being a significant event that has changed the world, I think serves only to feed the terrorist cause. Margaret Thatcher once enjoined the press to starve the IRA of the oxygen of publicity, and I think that was a very wise thing to request. And I fear that with 9/11 as a society, we've done the exact opposite of that. We've fed them with the oxygen of publicity rather than starving them.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.